The CIPD SurveyMonkey request will be sent to you. So please do. Sorry about that, my machine started talking to me, Henry. Would also like to say to you all, please could you complete that towards the end? And just a reminder in that respect, that it's key that you all as participants, please share and use your full name in the participant list so we can contact you. Next slide, please. So there's quite a few events coming up. Just to make you aware, they are good events and key ones to go to. It's important for you all to build your continuous professional development, and this is part of that process. So we have the Employment Law Update event coming up on the 11th of March, HR Hot Topics Networking Group, What is Your Roadmap on the 12th of March, Why Talent Programs Fail, which we've got again as our keynote special speaker, Peter, on the 16th of March. So just to make you aware of those events, please do book onto those events. Again, it's all part of your learning and your progression. Next slide, please. So this is just a signpost of some of our resources for you. Please access and tap into those resources to add value again to your learning and your development. Next slide, please. So at this point, I think this is where I hand over to you, Peter. Is that correct?
Yep. If I can.
Thank you very much.
To work Zoom. I'll just come back for a moment. Oh, there it is. My mute and buttons disappeared while I'm screen sharing. So, hello everyone. Just wanted to drop in and say hello, just in case you can only see the slides when I'm talking rather than seeing me as well. You might think that's an advantage. So I'm going to go through, it's actually pretty much the same presentation as I went through at the Midlands Student Conference, which was almost exactly a year ago. And obviously a lot's happened in the world in the last year. And there's been some changes obviously to accommodate that in the CIPD qualifications and so on. So I know that at the moment there are some changes in how exams are being done, for example. And I don't know much about that, to be honest, so happy to answer any questions specifically on that in the Q&A at the end. So if you've got any questions, just drop them in the chat box and then we'll come back to them at the end. So I'm going to go back and share my screen again and I'll see you all again shortly. Right then, so navigating your CIPD course, and a couple of things that I'm going to cover in this session, the CIPD course itself. And then secondly, I guess the reason why you're doing the CIPD course is to advance your career. So I'll talk a little bit about that as well, how the qualification is going to help you in that regard. So why am I telling you all this? That's the first question, as in why am I telling you all this? So a little bit about me. I'm a member of the Coventry and Warwickshire branch committee, have been for, I think it must be coming up on 3 years now. And I did a level 7 advanced diploma between 2016 and 2018. And I did that with no previous academic background. The previous thing that I'd done was an A-level back in 1990-ish, about 1990, 91, something like that. And so I was coming into it really with no idea of what to expect and having to figure everything out from the ground up, really. That's my certificate to prove that I managed it. I survived. I got to the end of it. So if nothing else, it is proof that these things do exist. You will get one at some point. And I was a finalist in the People Management Awards for Outstanding Student of the Year. That was 2019. And my submission that got me selected as a finalist was my research report from the CIPD course, the Investigating a Business Issue. module. So I submitted that, and that was an interesting process as well. Didn't win, sadly, but being a finalist was an interesting experience as well. So some of this that I'm going to share with you today is in common with the official advice that you'll get from the CIPD, echoes what you'll get on the CIPD website and the exam prep webinars, things like that. And some of this is definitely unofficial advice. So to keep it to yourself, I'm trusting you all to keep some secrets that I've learned the hard way. What I would say is that all of this is going to be helpful to you. Maybe not right now, because it depends on where you are in your course and your studies. But if you come back and watch the recording and look over the slides again, at the right time, I guarantee you'll find all of this useful. So let's start with your course that you're on. Eleanor, could we run the first poll, please? So we're going to do, I think, 3 polls just to find out a little bit more about you, about who's in the audience. So if you could just reply to that one first. Obviously, if you're all in the same room, I'd ask you to put your hands up. So this is a good substitute for that. So runaway level 5 at the moment, isn't it? So I'm going to agree what we've got. Okay. So majority doing level 5. So that's interesting. Okay, nice. So let's stop that one then. Let's have the next poll, please, Eleanor. Let's find out where you're studying at the moment. Are you studying actually in a venue like a college, university centre? Obviously, you haven't been able to go into classes for a while, but or purely through an online provider, which is the route that I took a couple of years ago when I did mine. Okay, so that's reasonably even. That's great, because one of the issues that I have, or the concerns I have, is that I think often the students working through online providers are kind of forgotten sometimes, because you're reliant on your centre, on the online provider, to pass on news, information, and so on, and represent you. So that's good to see. It's about half and half. And let's have the third poll, please, Eleanor. Which is, when are you studying? So is it an official part-time course, or is it full-time? Or if you're doing it online or even part-time, if there's no fixed time scale to when you've got to complete the course, you're just doing it as and when you can fit it in. So that's excellent. 21, 34, 46. So almost half of you then, I guess, trying to fit the job around other things. Do we have another poll, Eleanor, or is that the last one?
That's the last poll.
That's the last one. Excellent. Fantastic. So if it's as and when you can fit it in, I'm guessing that you're also working as well as around that, which presents a new set of challenges, of course. So my aim when I did the course was to get through the course with the best results, with the least amount of effort. And I think, life is hard enough as it is, certainly has been the last year. Why make life any harder by setting yourself unrealistic challenges that nobody's asking you to set, and nobody's giving you any recognition for? So how can you get through the course, get the best results for the least effort? That's really my objective and my focus. And in this part, I'm going to talk about study time, about using the textbooks, writing assignments, which I'm sure you've already had a lot of good advice on and practice on, getting feedback, and then the exams. I know that the exams don't apply to everybody here, but even if you're doing level 3 now and the exams don't apply to you right now, hopefully at some point in the future you'll move on to other levels, and you'll remember this advice, or you'll be able to, as I said, come back to the recording and the slides. So the first thing is, if you are studying part-time whilst also working, you might have started off by thinking, oh, it's fine, I'll do the studying in my spare time, which is what I did, which most people I've spoken to have said something similar. So right now, how much spare time do you actually have? And if you want, you can put an answer in the chat box, but I'm fairly confident of what sort of things you're going to come up with. So if you want, you can answer that. But it's an interesting question, because if you think, well, I'm going to do it in my spare time, it's like anything you do in life. It's like, you know, making time to go to the gym or making time for a hobby or something like that. You think, I'll do it in my spare time. Very little. Not enough. Still trying to work it out. Yeah, very good. The answer is absolutely none at all. Zero. You have zero spare time. And there's a very simple reason for that. Right now, you fill every minute of your life. There is no minute in your life where you're just sitting there doing this. You fill, as human beings, one of the things that distinguishes human beings from other animals is our tendency to structure time. We have rituals and we have habits and hobbies. We do things to pass time. We're aware of time passing. We don't sit around doing nothing. So you fill every minute in your life already. You won't find the time. You have to make the time. When I started doing my online learning, I thought, well, it's great, I'll do it in the evening, because I'm not really interested in watching TV in the evening, so I'll do it in the evening. But actually, after you've been at work all day, you need that time, whether it's watching soap operas or reading or hobbies or going for a run or whatever you do. You kind of need that downtime. It existed in your life for a reason. So you're never going to find time for it, but you have to make time if this is something that is important to you. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to. And what I would suggest, if you're struggling to make the time for it, for the studying, is to think back to where you started, to think, well, why am I taking this course? And if you're taking this course fundamentally for reasons of work, you know, you're not doing oil painting or basket weaving or, you know, pottery or whatever. You're doing an HR course, which presumably is related to your work now or your career, perhaps for the future. So if this is the way that I started to think about it, that really kind of got, I think it's fair to say that for the first 6 months, I didn't do much. I didn't work very quickly for the first 6 months because I was struggling to find the time. And then one day I realized, hang on, I'm doing this because this is going to benefit my career. This is my job. And if doing the course is my job, then I have to do it as my main priority in the working day. And that's what I did. And that's when my mindset changed. So my advice is you need to be studying during the working day because the study is your job. Now, if you're currently juggling this with working in HR or maybe some other role, you might be thinking, well, that's all very well. And, you know, I'm too busy to do that. And my boss won't let me, boss expects me. I don't have the authority to, you know, if your employer is paying for the course, then they're kind of implying that this is part of your job. You need to be doing this. And ultimately, when it comes to the end of it, the question you've got to ask yourself is, do you still want to be here wherever you are now in your career? Do you still want to be here in, say, another 10 years time doing the same thing? Every day that you delay finishing your CIPD course, if you have control over the speed with which you get through it, is another day that qualification isn't helping you build your career. And if you think about it from that point of view, I think it really helps to prioritize and make the time, rather than fitting the studying in only at the end of the day when you've got time for it. Make it your focus. That would be my advice. Because if, as I said, if you are doing this course to benefit your job, then the course is your job. One of the things I did that really helped me, you've probably done this already, but just in case you haven't, I'll cover it. I made a study schedule. So this is my study schedule at about just coming up to the halfway mark where I took a snapshot of it. And let me explain what this actually means. So at the bottom, you'll see a row with the module names, RTM, LTD, and so on. And that is the whole course broken up into assignments, not modules, because the modules had different numbers of assignments and therefore would take different amounts of time to complete. So that's the whole course, but broken up into assignments. And I made assignments the milestone because the assignment is the only thing you're going to mark for. It's the only thing you get graded for. Nothing else matters, not in terms of getting the best results for the least effort anyway. So what I would do is, as soon as I'd completed an assignment, I would put the grade that I'd got in that box. And you can see there that I got a few passes, a few merits, a couple of distinctions, which was pretty much the case throughout the whole course. Now, those top 3 rows that are labeled 36 months, 30 months, 24 months, they are kind of predictions. What they're there to say is, if by this point in the course, this is the stage that I'm at, it means I'll have finished the whole course if I carry on at the same rate at this time. So if you see where I'm up to in the LMD module, when I took this snapshot with the second assignment done, is roughly equal to the 30-month mark in grey, the 11 November it was in the 30-month scale. So what that means is that if I was to carry on doing the assignments at the speed I was going, it would take me 30 months to finish the whole course. And that was a huge shock to me, I've got to say, because the online provider that I did the course through said you have up to 3 years to complete the course. And they said, you know, some people, if they work really hard at it, do it in 18 months. And I thought, well, 18 months is probably unrealistic for me. A couple of years would be nice, but I know I've got 3 years. Well, that was a real shock that at the speed I was going, it was going to take me 30 months. So this was a few months, about 6 months in. I had this kind of realization that the only way I was going to get through this, as I said, was to make it my day job. So I started making it my focus. As soon as I did that, I completed the whole course, including the exams, in 19 months. So what that means is, if I'd have had that attitude from the beginning, I could have done the entire level 7 in a year. And suddenly, I think when you think about it in that sort of time frame, certainly in my mind, it makes it sound like it's a lot less work than when somebody says you've got 3 years to do it. Or some people, if they work really hard, do it 18 months. I would say if your attitude is right from the start, a year is achievable. 18 months is comfortable. So a study schedule, as I said, assignments, not modules. What it allows you to do is track how fast in reality you're going through the course. And that allows you to predict when you might get to the end point. The other thing is, I actually had this printed out and sitting on top of my computer monitor. So every day it was a reminder about the clock ticking. And every day it was a reminder about what I had already achieved and how far I'd come. And it's really important to celebrate that as well, and not just think, oh, I've got, you know, however many assignments and modules left to do. Also to be aware of how much work you have done, because that's the investment you're making in yourself and your own careers. That's important. Okay, textbooks. It's a question I get asked a lot. I get people contacting me on LinkedIn and asking this sort of question in the discussion groups on social media. So textbooks. They're not exactly Harry Potter. So, you know, they're not the kind of thing that you're going to curl up and, you know, you're not going to take them on holiday with you unless you're going somewhere awful, I guess. But they're written as reference guides. They're actually not written and not intended to be the last word on the subject of HR. They're designed to be companions to the course and reference guides. That's an important distinction. Each book covers a very broad subject range. And what I found when I was looking for references in the textbooks was the relevance to an assignment that I was writing. In that one huge textbook might be one single paragraph, or in some cases, nothing at all. So they're kind of helpful up to a point, but they're not really written to be read in that way. They're expensive to buy as well. I often see, again, on the social media groups, people buying and selling them. Luckily, doing it through an online provider, I got the ebook versions for free, but you only get them while you're doing the course. So when you're looking up things like references, I highly recommend using Google Scholar, which is different to the regular Google search engine if you haven't used it before, and it allows you to look up academic texts. And I highly recommend what I think is either the number one or the number two most important way of getting value for money from your CIPD membership, and that's something called the EBSCO portal. So if you haven't found that, have a look for that on the CIPD website once you're logged into that. And the EBSCO portal is another search engine that allows you to look up academic research that otherwise, if you were just going through Google, you'd probably hit a paywall and end up having to buy a subscription to something to get access to it. So it's a really fantastic source of reference for HR and broader business related journals. Definitely recommend using that. And it's much easier to find stuff through those sorts of methods than it is by trawling through the textbooks. However, my secret top tip, this is the unofficial top tip that I'd ask you all to keep to yourselves. My secret top tip for how to get the best out of the textbooks is I didn't read any. I thought I would. I sat down one day and thought, right, I'm going to start reading the text. I got literally half a page in and thought, my brain can't take this. This is just written in a way that is just not designed for reading. So I gave up on it. I didn't read any after that. And you might think, well, how did you get through the assignments then? And I will give you my secret method for getting secret unofficial method for getting through the assignments. Oh, and that brings us on to the assignments. So the first rule for assignments, if you've already done your assignments and you're already, a good way through your course, you will already know this. You will already have found this out the hard way, I'm sure. But the first rule for assignments is, or who says, Eleanor says, EBSCO gives you access to over 200 journals. It's a fantastic resource and worth the CIPD membership fee alone. So the first rule for assignments is read the question. Might sound obvious, but you would be amazed. And as I say, if you're already doing, part way through the course, you'll have worked this out the hard way. It's amazing just how easy it is to actually not read the question that you're answering. Second rule for assignments, read the question. Technically the same as the first rule, but so important I felt it was worth mentioning twice. The point about reading the question is not only is the question going to constrain your answer, the question also, because of the way that it's worded, basically gives you your answer. The question really tells you exactly how to answer it. They couldn't make it any easier for you than if they just wrote the answer for you. It's that straightforward. And this is such an important point because by the time you've written 2 or 3 paragraphs, you'll have forgotten what the question was. And if you write like I guess most people do, which is you write in a kind of a sequence, and every point you make is building on the point you came before, when you start to move off course a little bit, you'll be half a page into your assignment and you will no longer be answering the question. What instead is what you'll be doing is answering in terms of you'll be writing what you want to say rather than what the question asks for. And that might be a bit disappointing because you might be, an expert on a particular subject and you really love to talk about it. That's great, but you don't get any points for that. And therefore it doesn't contribute towards your grade. It only contributes towards your grade if you are answering the specific questions. So what I would advise you to do, if you haven't figured this out already for yourself, everything you need to know is in the question. Literally stop writing every 2 or 3 paragraphs. Go back and look at the question and be ruthless with yourself. It doesn't matter how beautiful and poetic and insightful what you've written is. If it isn't answering the question, it doesn't matter. It doesn't count for anything. And if you're wandering off topic, as I say, you don't get any points for that. Be ruthless with yourself. Cut it, go back, reread the question, ask yourself, am I actually answering what they're asking me for? And if not, then cut it out.
Hello? Yeah.
What? Somebody's on the phone, I think. Somebody's not on mute. So if you don't cut it out, then what will happen is you're just wasting your word count on something that doesn't get you any points and doesn't contribute towards your grade. So, and takes time. and makes the course last longer. So one of the ways that you get through the course faster is to write more efficiently. The way to write efficiently is to write what they've asked you to write. Simple as that. If you are trying to make your assignments perfect, then you're missing the point of the submission process. This is something I see a lot, certainly saw a lot a couple of years ago in the online discussion groups, various on social media and the CIPD forums. People saying, oh, it's taken me all these weeks to write my first assignment and I haven't submitted it yet because it's not perfect. It's not you marking it. I know this is such an obvious point, but again, it's something that's so easy to get wrapped up in the routine of doing it and doing the course, to forget that you're not the person marking the assignment. Nobody cares what you think. Nobody cares that you think your assignment is perfect or not. They will tell you, they will mark it, your tutor will mark it, and they will tell you. You will never learn anything if your assignments are all perfect first time. Because if you send in an assignment and it passes, that's it. You can't resubmit it. You just get a pass. And you think, oh, maybe I could have done better. Maybe I could have put more references. Maybe you could have done. You will never know. You're not the person marking it, so it doesn't matter what your opinion is. So don't keep holding on to an assignment and going back to it every day and tweaking it and changing a word and putting a comma in a different place, trying to make it perfect. All that's happening is that your fear of failure is what's actually making you fail. So instead, get the thing done in as rough a version as you can. I would say actually for the way that it works in terms of, you get, I think, 3 goes at the formative assessment. You get the formatives and then you get the summative assessment. The summative is the only one that you get a grade for, and you get 3 goes at submitting to each one. At least I hope that's still the case. It certainly was when I did it. And the point being, as I say, if you submit first time and pass, well, what did you get? 51%, 60%? How close were you to a merit? There's no way to know. But if you submit something that is kind of rough and it answers the question, nobody is assessing you on your beautiful use of English language. Nobody is assessing you on your poetic use of metaphor. They're assessing you on, did you answer the question? So if you try and get your assignment first time, there's no room for the tutor to give you feedback, and feedback is what you will learn from. It doesn't matter what you think. Give the tutor something to give you feedback on. That's what they're there for. That's what you're paying them for. And when you get the final certificate, look at that. There is no grade on it. When I started the course, I thought, wow, I'm going to prove how amazing I am, and I'm going to really prove something to the world, and I'm going to work really hard, and I'm going to get a distinction in every assignment. And that naive optimism and exuberance lasted about a week. To be fair, probably a bit longer, before I realized this is a waste of time, because I could get a distinction in every assignment and nobody will ever know that. Nobody cares. Just getting over the line is as good as getting 100%. It doesn't matter because the certificate doesn't have a grade on it. You do get another sheet with a certificate that says what grades you got in the modules. But if you do want to get a distinction in everything, there's a pretty easy way to do that. So if you use the formative assignments for feedback and you use the 3 goes for the feedback, just write whatever you think and force the tutor to give you feedback, specific feedback based on what's the deficit, what's the difference between what I've submitted and where it needs to be in order for me to get a pass, merit, distinction, whatever. So if I would send in an assignment and the tutor would send me some feedback, some tutors sent great feedback, detailed, thoughtful, helpful, really useful. I have to say, through the centre that I did it through, there were a couple of modules where the tutors were great. Most of the modules, the tutor were average. They'd just send back some very generic, unhelpful feedback. And a couple of the tutors were actively obstructive, actually, and really difficult to get any help out of. And I had to go through student services several times and complain and so on. And it's important to do that because, remember, this is your career we're talking about. And you've paid for this, presumably, if your employer hasn't paid for it. If you've paid for it yourself, you know, this is your money that you've spent for these people to do their job. Demand that they do it if you're not happy with the quality of the feedback that you're getting. Because if the feedback is detailed enough, it will tell you exactly what you need to add into your assignment to then get it to where you want it to be. Those 3 goes are there for a reason. They're there to provide space for the tutor to help you. So let them help you by getting your assignment in quick, rewriting it by adding what they're telling you need to add in there. And, you know, within 1 or 2 rewrites, you'll have gotten a pass. Probably, you know, as you saw from my my schedule that I shared with you, mostly merits and distinctions, because the feedback's so helpful. It lets you see what you can do to get to those higher levels if that's important to you. Third rule for assignments is, I caught you out, it's not read the question. It's demand feedback, as I said. And see, I'm just looking at the chat. Somebody has mentioned the organization that I did mine with, so that's nice. So demand feedback, as I say, you're paying for the course, or somebody is, and that's what the tutors are there for. So get your money's worth. Demand feedback, because the learning isn't in the textbooks. The learning isn't in the certificate. The learning is in the feedback that you get. And the feedback isn't just about technical HR stuff. It's helping you with assignment technique, exam technique, just generally how you approach the whole process of critical thinking, which, as you'll see when we get on to talking about the new profession map, you know, it isn't just about getting through the CIPD course. This is vital in the way that you think about your role and the way that you do your job in HR as well. So most modules follow the same assignment format. Some are a bit weird. So skills for business leadership and investigating a business issue, if you're doing those, they're the ones that seem to cause people the most trouble, because they're the ones that are most different to the normal run of assignments. So the questions I get asked most, and I was the student rep for the Coventry and Warwickshire branch for a couple of years, and now Daljit's team's taken that role over, which is excellent. So the question I used to get asked most about skills for business leadership is, what should I include? And the simple answer is just include everything. You don't get deducted points for putting too much in it. Use bus tickets in to show that you've been to a networking event. I don't know, put everything in it, every certificate. If you're coming along to CIPD branch networking events, which you have to do, I highly recommend that. Then you get a CPD certificate, print those out, include those, or attach them to the PDF and include those. Any online courses that you've done through LinkedIn or Udemy or Skillshare or anything like that, print out the certificate or put the certificate in there, include those. Any articles that you've written that are relevant to HR, include those. Anything that you've done that demonstrates that your personal and professional development is more than just the bare minimum, do the CIPD course. Anything that you're doing that's about improving yourself, increasing your learning and your knowledge of yourself and your work and the industry, put it all in there. You don't lose points for putting in too much, but you will gain points for showing that you've got a personal development plan. So that's another important thing to put in there, is the personal development plan, saying, I don't just go and read websites at random. Something interested me about a particular subject and I pursued it and I did these things. And then, I thought, well, what sort of role do I want to be doing in the future? And so I pursued learning that was relevant to that kind of thing. So you're going to include reading that you've done, online research, training that you've done through work, CIPD branch events, even notes that you've taken at meetings that you've been to, which are relevant. The thing that makes all of this learning is 2 things. Firstly, that you had a plan to learn something that this fitted into. Secondly, most importantly, reflection. That you didn't just go to a meeting, but afterwards you reflected on what you learned during the meeting about diversity or about equality in recruitment and selection or whatever. So that reflective bit in the continuous professional development and the training plan, the learning plan that you've got, is what's going to transform that into you having a real strategy around your own personal learning. If you're doing investigating a business issue, if you've got that coming up, or even if you're partway through it, most common question I used to get asked was, what topic should I choose for my project? And the simple answer is, it doesn't matter. Nobody cares what topic you choose. The only thing that people care about is the methodology that you use in investigating that issue. So if you want, you can put the availability of, different biscuit types in the tea room on staff engagement. And you can do a survey to see, do custard creams or chocolate digestives make people happier and more productive? It doesn't matter, as long as it's somehow related to HR, and the new profession map is a really valuable guide in helping you with this. As long as it's related, it doesn't matter. So choose your topic quickly and get on with the research, and get on with actually doing the doing the research and the analysis and the report. Because, as I said, you're not being assessed on your choice of subject, you're being assessed on your approach to the subject. So any subject that connects to HR. Another tip I would give you is keep the subject as narrow as possible. So somebody might say, oh, I'm going to do leadership. Really, it's honestly, if you're looking in research for your course on, leadership research goes back almost 100 years, and people still don't know what leadership is. So make it as narrow a subject area as possible, because that will make it easier for you to gather evidence, easier for you to gather data, easier for you to analyze, easier to write the reports, and you'll still be just as successful as if you've tried to reinvent the whole world of HR and create some huge fantastic flagship report. Keep it narrow, make life easy for yourself. You probably recognize this little diagram over on the left. It's the new profession map umbrella with the purpose at the center, but everything you're doing is principles-led, evidence-based, outcomes-driven. This is how the qualifications are now being assessed, the assignments and the exams, according to the new profession map. And it's a really clear, helpful guide for how to approach the course and your career development. So just quickly, if you are doing the IBI module, the process is very simple. You identify a problem in your workplace, and some people say, oh, well, I'm not currently in HR, or I'm only in a small business, or whatever. Okay, well, it doesn't matter, because when I did my IBI module, I'm a self-employed consultant. I don't have any colleagues or employer to go and do this in. So I identified an issue that was relevant to the work that I do about talent programs. And Eleanor said I'm running a workshop next week where I'm basically presenting the results of my research, the report that I did into why talent programs fail. I created a survey, a free survey using Google Forms. I posted it on LinkedIn, posted it in all the CIPD groups, posted it everywhere I could, in HR groups and learning and development groups, and I just kept on posting it and got everybody I knew to fill it in, and I got over 300 responses to that. So even if you don't work in a company where you can investigate a business issue within your own employer, it doesn't matter. Pick something that's generic, pick something that you think is an issue within HR in general, and get people to help you out by responding and providing data, interview people, that kind of thing. I got over 100 interviews with business managers from a couple of clients that were, I was very lucky, were able to help me with that. So the data's there. People are willing to help you in the social media groups, contact through the CIPD, maybe even through your local branch as well. You've got to gather data, primary data, interpret that, compare it to research, see what other people said, if they agreed with you or disagreed with you. most important thing is you've got to reach balanced conclusions. You don't just say, well, I think that custard creams are the most engaging, biscuit that gets people most engaged in their job. Go and find some research that agrees with you and quote that. You've also got to find research that disagrees with you and figure out, why is it different? How can I account for the differences in results? Are they significant? What do I need to do? And again, it's that reflective approach to learning that's important. And very important, make informed recommendations. So here's a list of things that the employer could do, and this is how much they might cost. This is how long they might take to implement. This is how we would, very important, this is how we would measure the effectiveness of these approaches, so the cost and the impact. Because certainly in, historically, HR people have been accused of not doing work that's relevant to the business and not doing work that's practical for the business. Well, this really, the new profession map really answers this and addresses this head on. If you're in your report, you're making informed recommendations, and this is the cost of it, and this is the impact that we're going to have, and this is how we're going to measure that. This is a template for how you as an HR professional would go about solving any kind of problem that you're presented with within a business. And this is absolutely the principles-led, evidence-based, outcomes-driven approach in action within this module. So it's a tremendous opportunity to practice and develop that skill set. Use the resources that are available to you. The CIPD wants you as a member, and therefore the CIPD will make it easy as possible for you to transition from being a student member when you've successfully completed your course into being an associate member, and then upgrade to a chartered member, which is where I am now, and then upgrade to a fellow. It's in the CIPD's interest to keep you as a member, and therefore the CIPD will provide you with lots of help. So we've got Facebook and LinkedIn groups. There's the CIPD Student Hub, which is a fantastic selection of resources on the CIPD website. And contains other things like the EBSCO portal and so on. There are just lots and lots of people there to help you to get through this with the minimum hassle necessary, the least stress and so on. Okay, so if you're doing a course that has exams, or you're considering this as your next step, a few words about the exams. The exams are really, really easy. And like anything in life, if you prepare for them. So as I said, the CIPD wants you to pass. So every time exams come round, they run exam prep webinars. I highly recommend these, that you join these. They're run by the examiners. They really couldn't do more to help you than if they sat in the exam and told you the answers. They will basically tell you how to pass the exam in terms of the approach, the methodology, how to read the questions, where the questions come from and so on. Sign up for them even if you can't attend, because certainly when I did it, they were recorded and you can watch the reruns. So they're very valuable, very important. Download past papers. Partly because exam questions get recycled and the same exam questions come up again and again, and it will give you a sense of what to expect when you get in there. Most important, practice writing your answers and then compare your written answer against the examiner's report in the past paper. The examiner's report, if you've not seen these already, they are amazing. Basically, the past paper tells you how many people took the exam, how many people got through at the different levels and so on. And then the examiner's report will tell you, for this question, the people who passed, what did they do? The people who got a merit, what did they do on top of that? And the people who got a distinction, what did they do on top of that? So the examiners basically tell you exactly what you need to do to achieve a pass, merit, or distinction in the exams. They really couldn't make it easier. They're a fantastic resource that I think they put lots of effort into, and they're definitely worth the time to read and to use them as writing practice. I don't know what it's like now with doing the exams online, how they're managing the timing of it and so on, but certainly when I did it, as I say, and presumably at some point in the future when we go back to sitting in an exam room, the exam is timed. And up until I started doing the course, the longest thing I've written in 20 years would be, a shopping list or a push from notes from a meeting or a coaching session. So I was faced with this kind of question that I have absolutely no idea how fast I write, and I've got absolutely no idea how much I can write, because when you go to the exam room and it's an invigilated exam, you're doing that by hand. Even if you're doing it on computer and with the lockdown and so on, even if you're able to do that, again, it's still so important to time yourself. You don't know how long it's going to take. You don't know how much you can write in the 3 hours that you've got. And it's so important, so critically important, to pace yourself and to plan your time when you're in the exam and work out how long to spend on each answer. This was the fundamental difference between the two exams that I took. So I took the HR exam, and then I took basically the L&D, the leadership development, leading, managing and developing people, I think it's called. I took them 2 days apart. So I took the HR exam, then there was a day off, and then on the next day I took the L&D exam. In the HR exam, I struggled for time. I wrote 7 pages of A4. I didn't answer all of the questions completely because I messed up my time management by miscalculating multi-part questions, and I got a pass. 2 days later, I did the L&D exam. I knew what to expect. I planned my time correctly for all the multi-part answers at the start. I wrote 11 pages of A4. That's almost 50% more, and I got a distinction. In the space of 2 days, I didn't know any more about HR or developing people. All that changed between a pass and distinction was my time management. And that changed because I knew what to expect. And I'm hoping that by sharing this with you, you'll have a bit of an idea what to expect if this is something that you haven't done for a while or haven't done at all, like I haven't done. So if you've got case studies coming, that they'll arrive ahead of the exam, and the case studies contain all of the clues that you need. You won't have any idea what the questions are going to be, although by looking again through past papers, you'll get ideas of the kind of questions. But the most important thing when you get the case studies is there'd be some huge hints in the case study about facts, statistics, particularly employment law and case law that's come up. So that's very important to spend your time researching that. Putting in references and statistics is a really easy way to gain extra points in the exam and in the assignments as well. And so remember as many references as you can. Now, one of the difficulties I had was that the references didn't really mean anything to me. They're 2 names in a year. I have no idea what that is. I mean, if I've not gone and read the original research, I mean, there's a bit of research which I have read into empathy and psychology by Gillies and Goldman, 1987 or 88, something like that. So because I've read the research, the name sticks in my mind because I've talked about it so many times when I'm doing training. But for other references that I included in the exam, I cannot remember for the life of me what they are. So when these just names and numbers, it's very difficult. Your brain doesn't really work that way in terms of remembering these things. So I'll tell you what I did, and it might help you. I made a list, and the list was the subject of the reference, so diversity, and then the name of the researcher and the year. And then I put them into categories. So basically, as I was doing the assignments, every time I put a reference in the assignment, I'd go and copy and paste that reference into a document that I was keeping all of my references in. And then over time, as that list got longer and longer, I categorized them into diversity, engagement, employee relations, that sort of thing. And then I would rewrite by hand that list, and I would read it over and over again and repeat it to myself. And I would even read out the whole list, and I recorded it on my phone, and I would listen to that, going to sleep at night, when I was driving along in the car, when I was on the train, anywhere where I had a time that I wasn't doing something else, I would be listening to myself and almost sort of singing along with it to record it. I'd print out a blank sheet of paper, a new template, and rewrite it over and over and over again. And what you're doing by doing all of this is you're using multiple different memory systems. Your brain doesn't have just one way of remembering stuff, it has multiple ways. So I've got my listening memory, hearing myself. I've got a speaking memory, which is partly about motor output when I'm reading them out loud and recording it. I've got my motor memory for handwriting when I'm writing them out. I've got a visual memory because I'm seeing them and I'm seeing them in the template that I've created. All of these different ways of encoding the same information. That is my master reference list. 4, 5, 6 pages, looks like for HR, and then a couple of pages for L&D, and then a pages for the case studies. And I don't expect you to be able to read that one. I'm just showing you how much was on there. And now, if you're looking at that thinking, well, that's ridiculous, there's no way I could remember all of those, then I'm going to share a really, really simple tip with you. Again, not official CIPD advice. I think the official line is, oh, you should know all of these because, you should be intimately acquainted with all of the research and you should have read the reference books. But I didn't do that, as I said. What I did was I grouped them like this. So on the left is my strategic HRM grouping, and on the right is my HRM grouping. And what I would do is I'd print out that blank template and I would then write in by hand as many references as I could remember. And when I couldn't think of any more, I'd get out my master list and I'd fill in by hand all of the gaps. I wouldn't just look at them and say, oh yeah, I forgot that one. Okay, I'll remember that next time, because you won't remember it next time. Filled them all in by hand, filled that all out, and then I threw it away and started again. And I did that over and over and over again, because it isn't enough to just know the reference. If your brain is used to writing the reference, because it's like, see that picture of the phone there are numbers like phone numbers and PIN numbers for your cash point card thing, that you don't remember the number, but you can produce the number if you're given a keypad. This is a very interesting aspect of your motor memory in your brain, called, you might have heard it called muscle memory. You can produce, for example, a telephone number on a keypad without remembering what that number is. So if you get used to seeing this template and your hand gets used to writing these names over and over and over again, that's getting encoded in your muscle memory. It's incredible, but it's true. And I was reviewing that list and I was listening to the recording, literally standing in the lounge in the hotel outside the room where the exam was being conducted, literally up until the moment the exam door opened. And then at the start of the exam, you get given your papers, and you have, when the time starts, you get 10 minutes reading time. And that time is designed for you to read through, decide which of the optional questions you're going to ask, work out all that sort of stuff. I didn't do that. I spent that 10 minutes dumping that onto the scratch pad. So the thing is, people think, oh, but there's no way I'm going to remember all of that. You don't have to remember it for the rest of your life. You only have to remember it for 10 minutes. And if you can get enough of that drawn out on the scratch pads in that 10 minutes reading time, now you don't have to remember them because they're written down. And this is completely legitimate use of the time in the exam, as far as I'm concerned. And literally, liberally pepper them amongst, like, it's like sprinkling them throughout your answers, as long as they're relevant. Use them as often as you can. The other interesting thing that I found is putting in a reference. If I'm looking at a question thinking, oh my God, I don't even know where to start with this. Well, I'll start by putting in a reference, and then the reference jogs your memory. You think, oh yes, Bass, and talking about leadership. I know, it was talking about whatever he was talking about. I don't remember now, but I remember the name 3 years later. So the references will also jog your memory to start telling a story about what the reference is about, and that gets you started. I don't even know if the examiners look up all the references you use and check them. I'm not saying that you should make them up. I'm just saying I don't even know that they're checked. But certainly what does count, and you'll see this in the past paper exam reports, using them definitely gets you points. New profession map that you'll be familiar with. As I said before, principles-led, evidence-based, outcomes-driven. That's the mantra that we all use now. And this is very, very important. Not just in terms of how you go about answering your assignments and exams, but also thinking about your career planning. Your qualification will not open doors for you. It will only put you on a level playing field. How you apply your knowledge, how you demonstrate your value, that's what will advance your career. You might think, well, you're in a small company maybe, or you got limited options. Well, if that's the case, why are you bothering to do the qualification? You're doing the qualification because you think it will make a difference to you. Most important, and the new profession map helps you with this, measure your impact. Write about your experiences. Use sites like LinkedIn. Write about your experiences, and when you write your CV, and when you're using this to drive your career development, write about your experiences in HR, even things that seem hard to relate. Like you've done some voluntary work or some intern work or something. What's important is how you've applied your knowledge. What's important is what you've learned from doing it. And talk in terms of the impact that you've made, not what you've done. Nobody cares about what you've done, how busy you were, or what your activity was. People care about what difference does it make, and that fits right into the new profession map. Principles-led, evidence-based, outcomes-driven. Outcomes, that's impact. What changed as a result of you applying your knowledge? So some of you who are at the start of your career, or maybe studying full-time right now, there's a paradox that you're in, which is at the start of your career, your qualifications are more important, but you don't have the experience to back them up. Later in life, experience becomes important, the qualifications less so. So the paradox is, how do you get the experience without having the experience? Because, those of you that have applied for jobs in HR, you might have had, on this occasion, you're unsuccessful because, you didn't have enough experience. Well, how are you supposed to get it then? It's frustrating. From the recruiter's point of view, experience is a lazy way to predict performance. They don't know how to figure out whether you are a good HR professional or not. So what they do instead is look for people who've worked in HR for 2 years. Time served is not the same as knowledge gained. So don't be led into that trap just because that's what a recruiter is asking for. Focus on impact. Tell a story about the impact that you've had and how you've measured it, and bypass the recruiters. Use LinkedIn to get straight to the decision makers and the hiring managers if you can. It's worth the effort. So for example, instead of saying I implemented a new HR information system, who cares, you installed some software. Instead, you might phrase it as I saved a certain amount of money by doing this. Instead of saying I managed attendance records, so you're administrator, so what? I increased retention. It's the story that people are interested in, that hiring managers want to hear about. The story, partly because it's describing what you've really achieved, but secondly, it's making you more interesting. It's telling them that there's a story behind you that they want to find out more about. And I think as a whole, the CIPD needs to be putting pressure on recruiters to use the new profession map. Otherwise, they're just going to carry on saying must have 2 years experience and this huge long list of things that you've done, even though that's irrelevant for the role. Build your network, very important. Contribute to online forums. Don't just lurk and watch other people's answers. Get involved, answer questions, even if you're not sure. Get involved, talk to people, raise questions, go to branch events. The single most valuable use of your CIPD membership. Go to branch events like this one. Network and connect with other HR professionals. Much easier when the branch events are in person and you're physically there in the same room and you're chatting over a cup of tea. But use the resources that you can. Define your identity and focus on your target role. So if you're currently planning career change and people ask you what you do, don't say, well, at the moment I'm an HR administrator, but what I really want to do is move into OD, or maybe. Nobody cares about what you're in the middle of or what you don't want to do. rule of thumb is if you don't want to do it, don't tell people about it. When somebody asks what you do, tell them about what you aspire to, what you're moving towards. Not I'm going to be, or I'm planning, or in the future. Make it now, because that's the only thing that distinguishes or identifies you is what you say you are. And if you say I'm an HR professional, nobody's going to say to you, I don't believe you, show me your CIPD certificate to prove it. Nobody's that interested. But tell the story that sets a direction, and talk about where you've come from. Nobody's interested. So talk about what you are doing. I'm building my network to move into an OD role. Crucial question for you to ask always, always, always in networking: who can you introduce me to? It's very unlikely you'll go to a networking event and meet a hiring manager who says, hey, I'm just about to hire for somebody exactly like you. Can you start on Monday? It could happen if you go to enough events, but it's unlikely. What's more likely is that person has a network that they can connect you with if they trust you and they understand what your objectives and your intentions are. So think about where you're going in your career. Think about who's going to help you get there. Directly ask them to help you. Who can you introduce me to? Who can you connect me to? Don't just focus on the endpoint. Have you got any vacancies? Because the chances of that are unpredictable. But who can you connect me to? They know people. They know other people. They've been in the business longer than you probably, and they know people they can introduce you to. So ask them to do that.
Peter, 5 more minutes.
Okay. So most valuable way that I personally get value out of my membership is join the branch committee. That was the best thing I did. Go to as many HR events as you can, because it isn't just the CIPD running them. The recruitment companies, employment law firms are running them. All kinds of different HR related networking events, and it makes a difference for your CPD as well. That's valuable. Use the Career Hub. Enter the People Management Awards. The closing date this year is 25th of March. So apply to be Student of the Year. There's 2 levels of entry. I think it's level 3 and 5, and then level 7 in another one. But there's two levels. Enter yourself. Put yourself forward as Student of the Year. If you get shortlisted, then going and presenting is a great experience, and you do get really good feedback from that, and it's a great differentiator as well. So definitely do that. Build your network, and as soon as you come out of the course that you're studying, you'll, as I say, you'll automatically transition to associate. Upgrade to a chartered member. Yes, it costs some money, but it's worth it because of the reflective process that you have to go through to be able to articulate your experience and your expertise to meet the upgrading criteria. So that's a really useful exercise in itself. And at the end of the day, it's your career. So that alone should make all of this worth the effort, because, you know, in 10 years' time, as I said earlier, you don't want to be looking back thinking, oh, I wish I'd finished that course. I wish I'd have done something with that qualification. Every day you put it off is a day that isn't helping you. So it's your career, it's your priority, and you've just got loads of support to help you to do that. Make the most of it. So I think if there's going to be any questions in the chat box, then I'm happy to spend as long as you want answering those. I'm going to turn the screen share off.
Wonderful. Peter, thank you very much for a very frank and informative approach. That was excellent. And you covered quite a lot of areas that are quite a challenge, I'd say, right now in the world of COVID and the way we're doing exams on an online platform. Can I now suggest to colleagues to put your comments into the chat box? Peter will have a look and we'll try and group them and answer your questions. For those of you that feel you'd like to unmute and ask a question from Peter, we're happy for you to do that, but please do raise your hand so we're aware of that. If that's okay, over to you.
Can I just start? There was one question back at earlier in the presentation from Yasmin, which was, how did you break down the modules for the study plan? Did you include both summative and formative?
Good question. I only included the summative because that's the only one that you get a grade that counts towards anything. When I did mine, the advice from the provider was you don't have to do the formatives if you don't want to. You can just do the summative because that's the only thing they grade. But the way the formatives were structured means that if, for example, you've got 4 formatives and then a summative, well, the summative is basically a sum of the 4 formatives. So if you're just taking out the, you know, the start and end, it's like these TV series where you spend the first 10 minutes previously on whatever, and then the end of the last 10, you know, the last 10 minutes showing you what's coming in the next one. If you take those bits out, put it together, you've basically got your summative assignment, and you've had a lot of good quality feedback that's allowed you to create that and write that in the best way possible. So so I structured my schedule only for the summatives. But yeah, I mean, you could do the formatives as well if you wanted to. It would make it, I think it's important to have a schedule that you can put somewhere that at a glance you can see, how am I doing and what do I need to focus on today? I think that's probably the most useful thing, I think.
Okay, Naomi has got her hand up, so I don't know if you want to come up.
Hi there. So I'm Naomi. I'm working towards a level 7. I failed both exams in September. I also started a new job come January. So I chose to defer my exams. So they're looming on me in May, but I don't work in a directly HR role. I'm more social value. So you can ask me anything about apprenticeships, work experience, school engagement, but I really struggle with business examples. So I don't know what advice you can give me, because I feel like I've tried everything. I did so much revision last time, but I don't know how I can overcome that barrier.
And the advice I give would be the same as what I got from the exam prep webinar, which is just spend some time reading the business press and just get to know the kind of issues and the sort of pressures in the environment around HR professionals. I think it's an important point, because obviously one of the things the CIPD is trying to do is extend the membership to a lot of people who are working with people but not in an HR capacity. I think it's been very HR manager centric in the past, and that's certainly, you know, changing with the new profession map. So I would see your different experience as an asset, but I think you're right. The key is understanding the language of HR, even if you're not working in that role. Understanding, you know, what lockdown, coming out of lockdown, people getting back into the workplace. It's not just about opening up the doors and putting up screens and bottles of sanitizer. There are other issues to be considered. And if you understand, if you're thinking about that in the language of HR, then that then becomes a real asset to you, I think. And my advice for doing that, as I say, is read some business press, business publications, even People magazine that comes through.
Yeah, I know it's hard, because I feel like I've done all that and I've joined study groups, but it's obviously how I articulate it in an exam. So I'm really anxious that May is going to come and I still don't feel ready, but I don't know how I can make myself feel ready.
Have you read,
What I'm going to suggest,
the past papers?
Yeah, so I'm eagerly waiting for the January ones to come out so I can do a little bit of practice, but I always think that's a little bit read between the lines as well when I've read it back.
It's as helpful as they can be without telling you the answer.
Yeah, whereas I'm a person that I need to know how to write an answer. Really, I really would like, you know, what does a good answer look like, which I can't seem to find anywhere.
Yeah, I would, if you haven't done so already, I would also suggest maybe through some of the social media groups asking, you know, other students if they've got examples of past answers that I'd be happy to share with you, to see, you know, what's the kind of you know, verbatim answer that actually gets a pass and a merit and a distinction. And that's
what I struggle with, because in my SBL one I got a distinction, so how do I go from a distinction to then failing both exams? It just feels like something's gone horrendously wrong somewhere for me.
And as I said, the SBL is a very different format anyway.
Yeah.
But if you contact me, I think you maybe saw my details on the...
I know Eleanor's kindly asked me to email her, so I was going to put that in. Sorry that I've taken up so much time, but I just really want to reach out to someone to get...
Yeah, I'll put my email address in the chat and just drop me a line and I'll help you.
The other thing I'd like to suggest to you is try and be part of an action learning group where you can have a discussion and interaction, to just build your confidence up, so you're not having a mental block when it comes to exams, because that happens sometimes. I'm one of those people. Put me in an exam setting, I'll freeze.
And I did have a learning group over Christmas, but I chose to then defer mine. But it was really useful. But I'm thinking I don't have that support group at the moment ready for the May exams. But you know, we were discussing the case study.
Yeah. And Peter, if you can provide any support, if we can do anything for you, Naomi, just get in touch. We're more than happy to do that, even if it's through our student engagement group, and we try and connect something or coordinate something with Peter and others, and we'll try and do that. Thank you. I hope that's helped you, Naomi. Any other questions or comments from chat room, or whether you want to unmute and have a chat or share your experience?
Peter, have you seen there's one from Katrina? Just says.
Oh yeah,
Peter, I'm studying
HR level 3 on the professional discussion. I'll be completely honest with you. I don't know what the professional discussion is, Katrina. Maybe Daljit can fill in the gaps there.
The only thing I'm aware of, and I could be out of my depth, and apologies if I am, Katrina, is more to do with the current priorities around approach in terms of well-beings there, equalities and inclusion is part of the wider perspective, and moving from theory to practice. So going back to the social value model, actually, and how do you put that into practice as an overarching theme. Katrina, I hope that's answered your question. If not, we're happy for you to unmute and share your perspective on it, or what you've heard about that particular aspect.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi there, Katrina here. So with the professional discussion, from what I've been told, my assessor, that they kind of ask you a series of different questions, asking about your HR experiences. And I think within this, they kind of look for HR terminologies and things like that. And I wondered if you had like any tips regards to that on how we should be conducting ourselves, but also kind of any tips on particular keywords maybe that they may want from you.
That sounds very similar to the way the upgrading reviews work. If you elect to do the one that's kind of done in person, you get a phone call and they talk you through, you know, they ask you questions about your experience. It sounds very similar in style to that. I think it's like learning any language. The best way is to immerse yourself in it. The reason being, you might think, well, you know, if I want to learn to speak Italian, what's the use of immersing myself in Italian? I don't know what it means. But the point is, you start to get used to how it sounds. And you can't effectively speak another language until you first hear how it sounds, hear the, you know, the cadence and the music of it, if I put it that way. And it's the same with jargon. If you immerse yourself in HR discussions, on social media, on, you know, going to other webinars, non-CIPD webinars, whatever, you start to get used to hearing the way that people talk. And, you know, HR people will talk differently to the way that software engineers talk, who will talk differently to the way that entrepreneurs talk. And it is about a language, like a cultural language. So my advice just in general would be to immerse yourself in that, just to get used to how it sounds. And as you do that, start to relate that to what's my experience, because I think one of the difficulties of the sort of situation you're talking about is, so I did something at work, like implemented an HRIS, but I don't know how to describe that in a way that makes sense to somebody who's speaking a different language. Or it could be that I helped out at a local voluntary group and I did their GDPR review without realizing that's relevant to HR. So it's only when you hear other people's conversations and you start to think, oh, that actually sounds like what I was doing. I didn't realize that I could use that as an example. And certainly what I think you'll probably find, and what I found when I did my upgrading assessment, is there are examples that, you know, I never would have thought were relevant, but they are, because it's more about showing the approach, the way of thinking, the way of, and certainly the shift with the new profession map is getting HR people to talk the language of business, not the other way around. So I think all of that would be useful in general to do, I would say, and useful when you go into interviews, as job interviews as well, of course.
Right, thank you very much. Any other comments from the chat box that we need to look at, Eleanor, Peter? Or does anybody want to mute and have a few final words or comments with this?
Got one from Mandy there saying, thanks, Katrina. We've got one from Mandy. Level 5 apprenticeship for the last module. It's an endpoint assessment, and we have an essay to write and professional discussion.
I think she's sort of explaining.
Right.
Professional discussion.
Okay.
Being an endpoint.
It sounds very similar to the way the upgrading assessment works. They don't prompt you, but if you listen carefully to the questions, they kind of do.
Okay. Thank you. It sounds as though we need to do a session on upgrading, I think, in the future, Peter. I don't know what to say. It sounds as though that would be really helpful for us all.
Thanks, Naomi.
Sounds quite good. Okay, any more comments from anyone?
As I said, I popped my email address in the chat, and that's on one of the last slides anyway. So, if any of you've got questions that come up or that you don't want to ask now, then by all means go back through Eleanor or Daljit or email me.
That's wonderful. No, we'll do that. And also for those of you who are in the Coventry and Warwickshire branch or committee or members, please get in touch with myself or Flora Jane. We're part of the student engagement group, currently exploring what we need to do and connect with your local networks. So we want to do that and encourage you to do that with us. If we have no more questions, I would like you all now to unmute, please, and say a big thank you to Peter. Peter, that was brilliant. I learned something new every time.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Peter.
Good luck, everybody.
Thank you.